The phone screen cracked under Savannah's trembling thumb as she typed the message that would change everything. Blood smeared across the glass, making it hard to see the letters. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Her right wrist hung at an impossible angle, broken in two places, cradled against her chest like a dying bird. Every breath sent fire through her ribs where Derek had kicked her after throwing her into the glass entertainment center. Amara, open this goddamn door. Derek's voice boomed through the bathroom door, rattling the hinges. The sweetness from 5 minutes ago had evaporated, replaced by the rage she knew too well. You know, I didn't mean it, baby. Just open up. Savannah pressed herself deeper into the corner between the bathtub and toilet, making herself as small as possible. The cold tile against her back was the only thing that felt real. Everything else seemed like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Her split lip tasted like copper. Her left eye was swelling shut. 5 years of marriage had led to this bathroom floor, covered in her own blood, typing a desperate message to her sister Nina in Seattle. Nina, he's going to kill me this time. She typed with her left thumb, each word a prayer. Broken wrist. Locked in bathroom. He won't stop. Phoenix Heights, Apt 23B. Please come now. Her finger hovered over the send button. This was it. This was her asking for help after years of hiding the bruises, making excuses, believing his apologies. This was her admitting she couldn't survive another night. She hit send. I'm counting to 3, Savannah. Derek's fist slammed against the door. 1. The phone buzzed in her hand. Thank God. Nina must have been awake. Savannah looked at the screen, hope flooding through her chest for the first time in hours. Who is this? This isn't Nina. Her heart stopped. Wrong number. In her panic, her bloodied fingers had misdialed. She'd sent her desperate plea to a stranger. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the blood from her split lip. 2. The door frame cracked. Wood splintered. He was really going to break it down. Savannah's fingers flew across the screen. She had nothing to lose now. Nothing left but this last desperate attempt. Wrong number, but please help. Husband breaking down door. He broke my wrist. He's going to kill me. Please. She sent it and waited, her whole body shaking. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. The longest 15 seconds of her life while Derek's countdown continued and the door groaned under his assault. Her phone buzzed. Address. No. 2 words. Commanding. Certain. Not a question. Savannah's fingers shook as she typed the address, added the apartment number. Then, thinking about what happened last time she called 911, she added one more line. Please don't call police. His cousin is APD. They won't help. Officer Reynolds had stood in their living room last year, looking at her bruised face, and asked what she'd done to provoke his baby cousin. Sometimes women need to learn when to shut their mouths, he'd said. The report disappeared. Derek got bolder after that. Another buzz. Stay low. Cover your head. 7 minutes. Then another message. What is your name? Savannah. She typed back, not understanding but grasping this lifeline like a drowning woman. Hold on, Savannah. Help is coming. She didn't know who this person was. Didn't know if they were even real or just some sick person playing games. But she pulled herself into the bathtub, curved her body over her broken wrist, and covered her head with her good arm. 7 minutes. Just 7 minutes. 3. The door exploded inward. The lock tore from the frame with a sound like a gunshot. Derek filled the doorway, his 6'2" frame heaving with rage and exertion. His eyes had gone flat and black, the way they always did before things got really bad. In 5 years of marriage, Savannah had learned to read those eyes. Tonight they said he wouldn't stop until something broke. Usually her. Who the hell are you texting? He lunged for the phone, grabbing her broken wrist to yank her from the tub. The pain was white-hot, total, obliterating. Savannah screamed, a sound so raw it didn't seem human. The phone clattered to the tile floor, screen up, messages visible. Derek snatched it, his eyes scanning the screen. Who the fuck is this? Who are you calling, you stupid bitch? You think someone's going to save you? He grabbed her by the hair, dragging her from the bathroom. Savannah's feet scrambled for purchase on the tile, then the carpet of their bedroom. She could see their wedding photo on the dresser, both of them smiling, her in white, him in a tux. That man didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never had. Nobody's going to help you, Savannah. Nobody gives a damn about you except me. You understand? You're mine. He threw her onto the bed and she bounced like a broken doll, her wrist exploding with fresh agony. Derek paced the room, running his hands through his close-cropped hair, muttering. This was the dangerous part. when he worked himself up to the really bad stuff. "You need to learn," he said, his voice dropping to that quiet, deadly tone. "You need to understand who's in charge here." His hands went to his belt buckle. Then they both heard it. Car doors. Multiple car doors slamming shut outside, the sounds sharp and purposeful in the midnight quiet. Heavy footsteps on the exterior metal stairs, fast and deliberate. Not the stumbling walk of their drunk neighbor. Not the shuffling steps of the old man in 23A. These were different. These were coming for them. Derek froze, his hands still on his belt. What the? The front door didn't open. It exploded. The entire frame splintered inward with a crack like thunder, wood and metal shrieking as it gave way. Savannah flinched, covering her head with her good arm, certain the building was collapsing. Men poured through the destroyed doorway. 5 of them, dressed in black, moving with the fluid precision of soldiers or something worse. 4 fanned out through the apartment, clearing it with hand signals and silent efficiency. The 5th stepped into the bedroom doorway and stopped. He was Korean, maybe 5'11", impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit despite the midnight hour. His face could have been carved from stone, all sharp angles and controlled intensity. But it was his eyes that made Savannah's breath catch. They swept over her, cataloging every injury with a look of such cold fury that she felt it like a physical force. Then those eyes locked onto Derek. "Mr. Brooks," the man said, his voice quiet and precise, carrying the faintest accent. "You appear to be making a serious mistake." Derek's bravado crumbled for just a second before he tried to pull it back. "Who the fuck are you? This is private property. You can't just..." The man moved. 1 second he was in the doorway. The next he was inches from Derek, one hand wrapped around Derek's throat, slamming him against the wall, so hard the wedding photo fell and shattered on the dresser. Derek's feet barely touched the floor. "My name is Daniel Choi," the man said, his voice still quiet, still controlled, somehow more terrifying than any scream. "Your wife texted me for help 7 minutes ago. I promised her I would come. I keep my promises." Derek's face turned purple. His hands clawed at Daniel's wrist, but the man's grip didn't budge. Just enough pressure to establish complete control without cutting off air entirely. One of the other men, Korean like Daniel but younger, approached Savannah carefully. His hands were visible, his movements slow and non-threatening. "Mrs. Brooks, my name is Marcus. We have a doctor waiting downstairs. May I help you up?" Savannah couldn't speak, couldn't process what was happening. She just nodded, mute with shock and pain and disbelief. Marcus supported her left side as she slid off the bed, careful not to touch her broken wrist. As they moved toward the door, she heard Daniel whisper to Derek, "If you ever come near her again, if you even think her name, you will disappear. Do you understand me?" Savannah didn't hear Derek's response. Marcus was guiding her through the destroyed living room, past the overturned entertainment center where this nightmare had started. Glass crunched under her feet. Another man in black held the remains of the door open, his face expressionless. In the parking lot, a black Escalade idled with tinted windows. A middle-aged Korean woman stood beside it, a medical bag in her hand. She wore scrubs and an expression of professional compassion. "Mrs. Brooks, I'm Dr. Helen Park. Let's get you comfortable and I'll examine your injuries." The back of the SUV had been modified. The seats folded into something like an examination table. Dr. Park helped Savannah inside with practiced gentleness, then carefully cut away the sleeve of her shirt to examine her wrist. "Definitely broken," Dr. Park said, her voice matter-of-fact but kind. "Both radius and ulna. We'll need x-rays, but I'll stabilize it for transport." Her fingers probed Savannah's ribs, making her gasp. "Ribs are cracked too. Possible concussion from the eye injury. How's your vision?" "Blurry," Savannah whispered. It was the first word she'd spoken since they'd arrived. "Who are you people?" Dr. Park smiled slightly as she worked, wrapping Savannah's wrist in a temporary splint. "Mr. Choi received your message. He takes such matters very seriously. But I don't know him. It was a wrong number." "Sometimes," Dr. Park said, securing the splint with gentle efficiency. "Fate works in unexpected ways." Minutes later, Daniel emerged from the apartment building, adjusting his cuffs as if he'd just finished a business meeting rather than a confrontation with a violent man. He slid into the front passenger seat and looked back at Savannah through the rearview mirror. "He will not trouble you again," Daniel said. It wasn't a promise. It was a statement of fact. The Escalade pulled out of Phoenix Heights apartments. Savannah watched through the tinted window as the building disappeared behind them. 5 years of her life, vanishing into the Atlanta night. She'd never go back. never see Derek again. She didn't know how Daniel had made that possible, but somehow she believed him completely. Dear. Park's private clinic was in Buckhead. In a building that looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility, the x-rays confirmed what Dr. Park had suspected. Fractured radius and ulna in her right wrist. 2 cracked ribs on her left side. Mild concussion. Lacerations requiring 12 stitches total. Contusions covering 20% of her body. Dr. Park documented everything with clinical precision, photographing each injury, making detailed notes. Why are you documenting everything? Savannah asked as Dr. Park stitched the cut above her eyebrow. The local anesthetic had numbed the physical pain, but nothing could touch the exhaustion settling into her bones. I said no, police. Mr. Choi's instructions, Dr. Park explained, her needle moving with practiced precision. This documentation is for your protection, should you need it later. But you're right. No police involvement unless you request it. His cousin, Savannah said, the words bitter. Officer Reynolds. Last time I called 911, he came. Stood in our living room and asked what I'd done to make Derek so angry. Said sometimes women need to learn their place. Dr. Park's hands stilled for just a moment. I see. Well, Mr. Choi has connections that supersede local law enforcement, Mrs. Brooks. The documentation is insurance. Nothing more. As Dr. Park applied the cast to her wrist, Savannah found herself talking. Maybe it was the pain medication making her loose-tongued. Maybe it was the sheer relief of being somewhere safe. Or maybe it was because Dr. Park listened without judgment, without asking what she'd done to deserve it. She told Dr. Park about meeting Derek 6 years ago at the hospital where he worked as an administrator. How charming he'd been, how attentive. How her mother had warned her that his charm felt too smooth, too practiced, like antifreeze, sweet and deadly. How Savannah hadn't listened because she was 23 and in love and certain she knew better. She told her about the first time he'd hit her, 6 months after the wedding. How he'd cried and apologized and sworn it would never happen again. How it happened again 2 weeks later. Then again. Then regularly. How he'd isolated her from friends, from family. Made her quit her job as an art therapist 3 years ago because he said it put ideas in her head. Ideas about independence. About having her own money. Her own life. My sister Nina moved to Seattle 2 years ago, Savannah said, her voice cracking. She begged me to come with her. But I couldn't admit it. Couldn't admit I'd been that stupid, that I'd stayed that long. So I lied and said everything was fine. Tonight was the first time I tried to reach out to her in months. And instead you reached Mr. Choi, Dr. Park said, finishing the cast. Who came anyway? Why? Savannah looked at Dr. Park directly. Why would a complete stranger drop everything at midnight to save someone he's never met? Dr. Park was quiet for a moment, packing her supplies. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. That's not my story to tell, Mrs. Brooks. But I will say this. Mr. Choi has very specific views about men who hurt women. Very personal views. He meant what he said. You're safe now. They drove to a high-rise in Midtown, the kind of building Savannah had walked past 100 times wondering who lived behind those floor-to-ceiling windows. The answer, apparently, was her. At least temporarily. Marcus showed her into a furnished 2-bedroom apartment on the 22nd floor. The city spread below like a circuit board of lights, beautiful and surreal. The closet held clothes in her size. The bathroom was stocked with toiletries. A new iPhone sat on the kitchen counter, pre-programmed with secure contacts. Building has 24-hour security, Marcus explained, his voice professional but not unkind. One of our team will always be on this floor. Mr. Choi's instructions. You're safe here, Mrs. Brooks. I can't pay for this, as Savannah said, overwhelmed. I don't have anything. Derek controlled all our money. I don't even have my purse. It's back at. Already handled. Marcus interrupted gently. When you're ready. Mr. Choi's businesses employ many people who are looking for fresh starts. But right now, you should rest. Heal. Everything else can wait. When Marcus left, Savannah stood in the center of the pristine living room and finally let herself break. She cried until dawn, great heaving sobs that hurt her cracked ribs, but she couldn't stop. She cried for the woman she used to be, before Derek had systematically dismantled her piece by piece. She cried for the 5 years she'd lost to fear and shame and the desperate hope that maybe this time he'd change. She cried because a stranger had come when she'd called for help and she hadn't even known such kindness existed anymore. But underneath the tears was something else. Something small and fragile but undeniably real. Hope. For the first time in 5 years, Savannah Brooks felt hope. 3 days passed in a haze of pain medication and sleep. When Savannah finally felt steady enough to use the laptop provided, she searched for Daniel Choi. What she found made her hands shake. His businesses were legitimate enough. Restaurants throughout Atlanta. Commercial real estate. Several high-end nightclubs. But the deeper she dug, the more questions arose. Reddit threads speculating about his family's connections. Whispers of Korean organized crime networks. One article from 5 years ago about his father's death under suspicious circumstances. Another about the Choi family's arrival from Seoul in the 1980s, building an empire that spanned legitimate enterprises and what the article carefully called other interests. Daniel Choi wasn't just a businessman. He was something else entirely. Something potentially dangerous. The knock on her door that evening made her jump. Through the peephole, she saw Marcus first, scanning the hallway. Then Daniel stepped into view, carrying bags that smelled incredible. Korean food. Her stomach, which had barely tolerated anything for 3 days, suddenly growled. "Mrs. Brooks," Daniel said with a slight bow when she opened the door. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I brought dinner. My grandmother's recipes. I thought you might be tired of delivery food." Savannah should have been afraid. This man who'd broken down a door and terrorized Derek without breaking a sweat. This man with whispered connections to organized crime. But standing in her doorway with bags of homemade Korean food, he looked almost nervous. "Please," she said, stepping aside. "Come in." They sat at the small dining table by the window. Daniel unpacked containers of bulgogi, kimchi, japchae, and a rich stew that made Savannah's eyes water from the spice. He served her with careful attention, making sure she had everything she needed before touching his own food. "This is incredible," Savannah said after her first bite of bulgogi. It was the first meal she'd truly tasted since that night. Everything else had been ash in her mouth. "My grandmother is a tyrant in the kitchen," Daniel said, and there was warmth in his voice when he mentioned her. "She believes food heals more than just the body. Is she the one who taught you to?" Savannah trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. "To break down doors? To terrify violent men with just your voice?" Daniel's expression darkened slightly. "My grandmother taught me many things. Honor. Responsibility. The importance of keeping promises. Especially promises made to people who have nowhere else to turn." Savannah set down her chopsticks. "I looked you up. I assumed you would. You'd be foolish not to. The articles say your family has connections. That your businesses aren't all." She searched for a diplomatic word. "Legal?" Daniel supplied, his voice neutral. "My family built businesses here over 2 generations. Some legitimate. Some in what you might call gray areas. I inherited both when my father died 5 years ago. I'm working to move everything legitimate, but it's a long process. Old connections aren't easily severed. So you're basically a gangster who happens to rescue women from domestic violence," Savannah said, the words coming out sharper than she'd intended. Maybe it was the pain medication. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the surreal absurdity of having dinner with a man who'd saved her life and might also be a criminal. Daniel almost smiled. Almost. "That's not inaccurate. Though I prefer entrepreneur with complicated legacy. And I don't make a habit of rescuing people. But I do answer every call for help I receive." "Why?" Savannah leaned forward, ignoring the twinge in her ribs. "Why would you drop everything at midnight for a wrong number?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He set down his chopsticks and looked out the window at the city lights. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but there was something beneath it. Old pain, carefully controlled. "My mother texted for help once. Her message went unanswered. I was 12. I found her body the next morning." He turned to look at Savannah, his eyes reflecting the city lights. "I made a promise to myself that day. I would answer every call for help I received. Every single one. Because I know what it's like when no one comes." Savannah felt tears prick her eyes. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be alive. That's enough." He picked up his chopsticks again, the moment of vulnerability passing. "Now, tell me about your work. Dr. Park mentioned you were an art therapist." So Savannah told him about her degree, her work with traumatized children at a community center in Louisiana, how she'd loved helping kids express pain they couldn't put into words, how Derek had made her stop 3 years into their marriage, saying it put ideas in her head about being independent, about not needing him. "You should practice again," Daniel said when she finished. "That skill, that calling, it's part of who you are. He took it from you. Take it back." 2 weeks later, when her cast had settled and the worst of her injuries had faded to yellow-green bruises, Daniel came by with a proposal. "I fund a community center in West End. They've been looking for an art therapist for 6 months. Would you be interested?" Savannah's first instinct was suspicion. Is this charity? Pity employment because you feel responsible for me? No. Daniel's voice was firm. The director, Mrs. Gloria Chin, makes all hiring decisions. I simply fund the building. She's needed an art therapist for months and hasn't found the right person. Your credentials are exactly what she's looking for. If you're not interested, tell me and I'll drop it. But I thought you might want to reclaim something Derek took from you. West End Community Haven occupied a renovated warehouse in a neighborhood that had seen better days but was fighting its way back. Inside, children's artwork covered the walls in explosions of color. Savannah felt something shift in her chest, like a door opening to let light into a dark room. Mrs. Chen was 60-something, Chinese-American, with no-nonsense eyes and a firm handshake. Mr. Choi mentioned you might be interested in our art therapy position. Tell me about your experience. The interview was real. Mrs. Chen asked hard questions about trauma-informed care, about working with children from violent homes, about her theoretical approach and practical methods. Savannah found herself answering with a confidence she hadn't felt in years, talking about something she knew, something she loved. We serve about 200 children weekly, Mrs. Chen said as they toured the facility. Many from households affected by addiction, incarceration, or domestic violence. They need safety and they need ways to process experiences most adults couldn't handle. Can you give them that? Yes, Savannah said, and meant it. Yes, I can. She started the following Monday. 8-year-old Jasmine was her first real breakthrough. Small and quiet, she'd witnessed her mother's boyfriend beat her unconscious. Wouldn't speak in group therapy. Wouldn't make eye contact. But when Savannah gave her paints and paper, Jasmine created a picture of herself as a superhero, protecting her mother from a monster. Tell me about your picture, Savannah said gently. That's me. Jasmine pointed to the superhero. I'm strong. I can fight the monster now. You are strong, Savannah confirmed. Stronger than you know. Watching Jasmine smile, really smile, Savannah realized something. Helping these children helped her too. Every breakthrough was proof that trauma didn't have to be the end of the story. That victims could become survivors. That broken could become whole again. Daniel visited the center sometimes, always respectful, never intrusive. He'd crouch down to the children's level, listen to their explanations of their artwork with genuine interest. They loved him, these kids who'd learned not to trust adults. Something about Daniel's quiet presence made them feel safe. 3 months after that desperate text message, Savannah moved into her own apartment. Small but sunny, in a neighborhood where she could walk to work. The rent stretched her new salary thin, but it was hers. Every piece of furniture she bought, every picture she hung was a declaration. This is my space. My life. My choice. You didn't have to leave, Daniel said, helping her move boxes. The other apartment was secure. Safe. I know, Savannah said, hanging a framed print of a Georgia O'Keeffe painting. But I need to know I can do this myself. That I'm standing on my own feet, making my own way. Otherwise, I've just traded one kind of dependence for another. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand. But I'd like to keep visiting. If that's acceptable. I'd like that, Savannah said, and realized she meant it. Over the past months, Daniel had become something more than her rescuer. He was becoming her friend. Their relationship evolved slowly, carefully. He'd bring dinner twice a week. They'd explore the city together, museums, concerts, restaurants she'd never dared go to with Derek. Daniel introduced her to Korean cinema, to his culture through film and food and stories about his grandmother. Savannah shared her artwork with him, her dreams of expanding the therapy program, her hope of reconnecting with her sister Nina. Have you called her? Daniel asked one evening as they walked through Piedmont Park. Fall had turned the trees gold and red. Not yet, Savannah admitted. I'm afraid. Afraid she'll be angry I waited so long. Afraid she'll say I told you so. Afraid she won't forgive me for lying about how bad it was. She's your sister, Daniel said gently. She'll forgive you. Love forgives. 6 months after the rescue, Daniel invited Savannah to meet his grandmother. The invitation felt significant, weighted with meaning Savannah didn't fully understand. Daniel had mentioned Halmoni often, with a mixture of respect, affection, and slight terror that made Savannah smile. Halmoni Choi lived in a traditional Korean home in Duluth, surrounded by a garden that must be stunning in spring. She was tiny, barely 5 feet, with silver hair pulled into a perfect bun and eyes that saw everything. Savannah felt like she was being x-rayed as Halmoni looked her up and down. So Halmoni said in Korean accented English, "You are the woman who texted my grandson by mistake." "Yes, ma'am," Savannah said, suddenly terrified. "I'm Savannah. Sit. Eat. Tell me about yourself. Over a meal of traditional Korean dishes Halmoni had prepared, Savannah told her story. About her work with traumatized children. About her dreams of expanding the art therapy program to more centers across Atlanta. About slowly rebuilding her relationship with her sister Nina, who'd cried with relief when Savannah finally called. Halmoni listened without interruption, nodding occasionally. When Savannah finished, the old woman studied her with those sharp eyes. You have survived much, Halmoni said finally. It has made you strong, not bitter. This is good. Bitter people cannot heal others. She turned to Daniel and said something in rapid Korean that made him flush slightly. What did she say? Savannah asked as they drove back to the city. Daniel smiled, a real smile that softened his usually controlled features. She said I should not waste time with someone worthy of our family. That your heart is good and your spirit unbroken. That I should consider my future carefully. Savannah's pulse quickened. And what do you think about your future? Daniel glanced at her, then back at the road. I think I've been waiting to hear what you want, Savannah. I don't want to rush you. After everything you've been through, you deserve time to heal completely, to be certain of what you want. What if I'm certain now? The words surprised Savannah as much as they seemed to surprise Daniel. What if healing isn't about waiting for some perfect moment when I'm completely whole? What if it's about choosing to live now, with someone who sees me as whole already? Daniel pulled into her apartment complex and parked. Turned to face her fully. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I want to try this. With you. Savannah's voice was steady despite her racing heart. I'm saying I've been waiting for you to make a move and I'm tired of waiting. I'm saying I know you're dangerous and complicated and probably involved in things I shouldn't ask about. But I also know you're kind and patient and you came when I called for help. I know you've never once tried to control me or tell me what to do. I know you make me feel safe and seen and valued. So yes, Daniel Choi, I'm saying exactly what you think I'm saying. Daniel's carefully controlled expression cracked. He reached across the center console and cupped her face with one hand, gentle as if she were made of glass. I've wanted to kiss you since you drew that sunset sketch 2 months ago and said it represented hope. Then kiss me, Savannah whispered. He did. Gentle at first, giving her every chance to pull away, to change her mind. But Savannah leaned in, kissing him back with 5 years of pent-up longing for connection, for tenderness, for passion without violence. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. Come upstairs, Savannah said. That night, Daniel approached her body like it was sacred. Every touch was a question. Every kiss sought permission. When she flinched at a sudden movement, he froze immediately, waited until she nodded before continuing. When certain positions reminded her of Derek's violence, Daniel added just without making her feel broken. When she started crying in the middle of it all, overwhelmed by the difference between this and what she'd known before, he held her until the tears passed. This wasn't just sex. It was reclamation. It was healing. It was proof that intimacy could be safe. 8 months after that desperate text message, Savannah was working late at the community center, finishing a grant application that would expand their program to 3 more locations across Atlanta. The building was quiet, most staff gone home. She was so absorbed in the budget section that she didn't notice the time until her phone buzzed. Daniel's text read, "Working late? Want me to send Marcus to pick you up?" She smiled, typing back, "Almost done. I'll catch a ride in 20 minutes. I'll send him now. Don't argue." Savannah shook her head, still smiling. Daniel's protectiveness had worried her at first, reminded her too much of Derek's control. But she'd learned the difference. Daniel's concern came with respect for her choices. When she said no, he listened. When she needed space, he gave it. His protectiveness felt like safety, not a cage. She turned back to her laptop, determined to finish this section before Marcus arrived. The sound of the office door opening barely registered. "I'll be ready in 5 minutes," she said without looking up. "Take your time, Savannah. We have all night to catch up." The voice froze her blood. Not Marcus. Not anyone from Daniel's team. Derek. She looked up slowly. He stood in her doorway, thinner than she remembered, his eyes sunken but burning with that familiar rage. In his right hand, held with disturbing casualty, was a gun. "Surprise," Derek said, his voice carrying that syrupy tone that used to make her skin crawl. "Did your boyfriend tell you I was gone for good?" "I was. For a while. But you're still my wife, Savannah. And I don't give up what's mine." "The divorce papers were filed 4 months ago," Savannah said, her voice steadier than she felt. Her hand moved slowly toward the panic button Daniel had insisted on installing, hidden under her desk. "I never signed them." Derek moved into the office, closing the door behind him. "And I'm not going to." We're leaving tonight. You're coming with me, or I'll kill that Korean bastard who thinks he owns you. He doesn't own me, Savannah said, her fingers finding the button. Nobody owns me. Not you. Not him. Not anyone. Wrong answer. Derek lunged forward, grabbing for her laptop. Savannah pressed the panic button as she stood, backing away from the desk. That was stupid, Derek said, seeing her hand move. Real stupid, Savannah. He raised the gun, pointing it directly at her chest. I should just shoot you now. Save everyone the trouble. But I want him to know. Want him to see what happens when someone takes my property. I was never your property, Savannah said. Something had changed in the 8 months since she'd left. Something fundamental. She wasn't the terrified woman in that bathroom anymore. And you're not going to shoot me. No. Derek's finger tightened on the trigger. Why not? Because you're a coward. You only hurt people who can't fight back. That's why you came here instead of Daniel's penthouse. That's why you waited until you thought I was alone. Savannah's heart was racing, but her voice stayed level. Daniel had taught her self-defense, had made her practice scenarios just like this. But I'm not alone. And I'm not afraid of you anymore. The building alarm shrieked to life, the panic button triggering the security system. Derek flinched at the sound, his attention wavering for just a second. Savannah moved. She grabbed the heavy ceramic mug from her desk, the one painted with wobbly stars by one of her students, and hurled it at Derek's face. It struck his temple with a satisfying crack. He staggered, the gun dipping, and Savannah followed up exactly as Daniel had taught her. Knee to the groin, hard and fast. Elbow to the face as he doubled over. The gun clattered to the floor. They both dove for it. Derek was bigger, but Savannah was faster. Her fingers closed around the grip first. She kicked it away, sending it skidding under the filing cabinet. Derek roared, tackling her. They crashed into the desk, then to the floor. His hands closed around her throat. Savannah clawed at his face, felt her fingernails draw blood, but his grip tightened. Black spots danced in her vision. The office door exploded inward. Building security poured in, pulling Derek off her. Savannah gasped for air, her throat on fire, as they restrained him. Then Marcus was there, and 2 more of Daniel's team, and finally Daniel himself. Daniel looked at Derek, held on the floor by 3 security guards, then at Savannah, bruised but standing. His expression went through several changes before settling on controlled fury. He moved toward Derek with lethal intent. No. Savannah's voice was hoarse but firm. She stepped between Daniel and Derek. Not your way. Not this time. Savannah, he tried to kill you. I know. And he failed. Because I fought back. She touched Daniel's arm, felt the tension vibrating through him. I want him prosecuted. I want the legal system to handle this. I want him in prison where everyone can see what he really is. Can you give me that? Daniel's jaw clenched. Then he nodded. If that's what you want. It is. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Real police this time, not Derek's cousin. Daniel's connections ensured they took the case seriously. The security footage showed everything. Derek breaking in, threatening Savannah with a gun, attacking her. His fingerprints were on the weapon. There was no way out for him this time. Officer Reynolds did show up, tried to talk to his cousin. Daniel intercepted him with a smile that was all teeth. Officer Reynolds, I don't believe you have jurisdiction here. This is being handled by detectives from downtown. Unless you'd like me to file a complaint about your previous handling of domestic violence calls involving Mr. Brooks? Reynolds left quickly after that. In the hospital later that night, getting her throat examined for damage, Savannah felt something she hadn't expected. Power. Not the violent kind Derek had wielded. Not even the controlled intensity Daniel possessed. This was different. This was the power of someone who'd looked at her abuser and refused to be a victim anymore. Does it hurt? Daniel asked, touching her hand gently. They'd given her something for the pain, but the bruises on her throat were already darkening. Not as much as you'd think, Savannah said. I fought back, Daniel. I actually fought back. You did more than that. You won. He kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. Derek Brooks pleaded guilty to breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted kidnapping, and stalking. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in state prison. The same week, Savannah's grant application was approved. Her art therapy program would expand to 5 community centers across Atlanta, helping hundreds more children process their trauma. She reconnected with Nina, who flew in from Seattle when she heard what happened. They cried together, apologized together, promised to never let silence come between them again. 10 months after that wrong number text message, Daniel proposed. Not with a diamond, but with his grandmother's jade ring, in the apartment where Savannah had first begun to heal. "This ring has been in my family for 3 generations," Daniel said, kneeling beside her couch. "Halmoni wants you to have it. If you'll have me. With all my complications and contradictions." "I will," Savannah said, letting him slide the cool jade onto her finger. "But I need time before we actually marry. I need to be completely whole on my own before I can be whole with you." "I'll wait as long as you need," Daniel said, pulling her close. "I waited 34 years to find you. What's a little more time? They say wrong numbers are just mistakes. Random digits misstyled in panic." But Savannah didn't believe in accidents anymore. That desperate text meant for her sister, received by a stranger instead, had saved her life. More than that, it had given her the chance to reclaim it. Some people might call it luck. Daniel called it fate. Savannah called it proof that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. That being rescued once doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong enough to rescue yourself the next time. And maybe that's what Daniel understood from the beginning. That saving someone isn't about solving all their problems. It's about giving them the tools, the time, and the safety to save themselves. Standing on her apartment balcony a year after that night, jade ring catching the light, Savannah looked out at Atlanta and smiled. The woman who texted a wrong number in desperation had found her right path. She'd found her strength, her purpose, her voice. She'd found love that respected rather than controlled. She'd found home in herself. The wrong number had saved her life. But more importantly, it had taught her how to save herself. If this story resonated with you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please hit that like button and share this video. Drop a comment below telling us what part of Savannah's journey spoke to you most. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about courage, survival, and the unexpected ways life can change in an instant. Your engagement helps us reach more people who might need to hear that there's always hope, even in the darkest moments. Thank you for watching, and remember, you're stronger than you know.